You're watching FanTeam Daily, a podcast by WhoScored.com. Hello and welcome to FanTeam Daily, the fantasy football show that could help you win real money with your football knowledge. On FanTeam Daily, we'll be looking at the record-breaking Euro 2020 fantasy football tournament, which has a minimum guaranteed prize pool of £1 million and a guaranteed first place prize of £200,000. Time to introduce myself and my panel for the final time. It's our fifth and final episode of the series. Ben, how are you? You going to be sad to not be doing these anymore?
Very, very emotional, my friend. It's been a great journey. Lots of great discussion points. Your views on the tournament, on individuals, on teams. It's been like a bit of an emotional roller coaster. I've been sweet on players. I've binned them. Now they're back in. So yeah, we look forward to seeing who I actually plumbed for tonight.
Oh, that's a nice speech there, Ben. It's getting me going. Jake, are you all right? Are you as emotional as Ben?
Yeah, I mean, guys, I'm really well. I've spent a lot of time with you two, probably more time with you two than I have my own family recently, talking about Thomas Souček and the like. I'm actually really excited now for the tournament to kick off, and I really like the fact that it's kicking off on the Friday night too. Just that one game, I'll be in a pub. I'll be watching my Italy defenders get a clean sheet, and we can kick off the summer well.
Definitely won't be 1-1 with random players who we'd never considered scoring or anything like that, will it? Never is. It always goes well. So before we start the show, what is FanTeam Daily and what is this show and this series about? Well, as I mentioned, FanTeam have got a Euro 2020 fantasy football game and the guaranteed prize pool is £1 million. It's £20 to enter. You can enter with multiple teams, so you can try out different strategies, tactics, you can captain different players, all of that stuff. The game is really similar to FPL. There's not too much to explain in terms of rules and scoring. Just check out the rules on the website, and we've touched on some of the key differences throughout the series, so go back and watch the other episodes if you want to know those differences. Jake, do you want to give us a little mention on what's coming up today? Sure.
So this is as you mentioned, the fifth and final show of FanTeam Daily for the Euros. If this is the first one you've seen, please go back and look at the others. There's been 4 of us so far. We've looked at essential picks. We've looked at budget options. We've also interviewed the man who won £180,000 last season playing FanTeam. That was a personal favourite of mine. He came with loads of insights, lots to think about. In today's show, we're doing team reveals, so each of us will showcase our squad and promptly have it torn to bits by the panel and hopefully in the comments too. Bring it on. Later in the show, we'll be giving away one more free entry to the game too, one more trivia question.
Great. Well, I think we should just dive straight in. As you mentioned, today's episode is our team reveals. I will go first. Get it out of the way. You can tear me to shreds. So yeah, good luck to me. So hopefully on the screen, anyone watching on YouTube should be able to see it now. I will go through just all of the players and then we'll do it sort of, we'll go defence, midfield and strikers, and you can tell me what I need to change, and I can end up tearing it all up after this episode's gone out. So in goal, I've got the Austrian backman, and I've got Kakir as the kind of the sub. I'm gonna. I know why you wanted me to go first, because watch me butcher these pronunciations of players, isn't it? Kya. Go Kya. So in defence, I've got Kya, I've got Alaba, I've got Spinazzola. And then on my bench, I've got Windal and Makalenko. And then in midfield, I've gone for the WhoScored favourite, Lorenzo Insigne, with Depay, Bale, Eriksen and Forsberg, which I think is a pretty tasty midfield, actually, because they are on everything, all of those players. So I'd be interested to know what you think about those. And then up front, I've just gone for the kind of the template 3, Lukaku, Kane, Ronaldo. So let's start with my defence. Who wants to have a go at me? Ben, go on. You can kick us off. What do you reckon?
Cheers, Az, for that. Yeah, really like the pronunciation first and foremost. So well done on that and get it out of the way.
Yeah, right.
Spinazzola, he was on my radar. There's some discussion around whether he'll actually start for Italy, but fortunately for the first game of the tournament, FanTeam will allow you to make changes, up until almost kick-off, which means that we will have that Italian lineup. So we know if he's locked in or whether it could be Emerson. The concern maybe going forward, because you've got two very, players very closely sort of linked. Mancini may flip-flop. So that would be my only concern there. I mean, we've talked about Alaba, and there's a lot to like. Every fantasy manager loves an out-of-position player. And for me, Denmark, And this is, I mentioned it at the head of the show. We talked about how my perceptions of teams and players have changed, and I hadn't give the Danish team, any consideration at all. But during those discussions and those insights that we've highlighted and discussed, they've come onto my radar, and I quite like Denmark now as a little bit of a dark horse for me. I think they could surprise a few people. So yeah, and the Austria and Bachmann, he looks like he's locked in now, and I didn't know a great deal about them, but certainly looked solid enough against England. They weren't put to the sword. I would maybe question if I think the World Cup qualifiers back in March, Denmark done a real sort of good job on them. I think they went there and they won 4-0. So that might be me only worry. For me, Austria are one of those teams that I want eyes on in the tournament. We haven't got that European qualification data because it's 12, 13 months ago. So the data set for those competitive fixtures since in recent times just isn't there for me with Austria. And while I think they could do okay, I'm just not certain.
It's purely just targeting that first fixture, really. Because what I've tried to do with my defence is have a decent rotation strategy and policy. So not just focusing on the first week, but looking ahead. So Bachmann will just play for the first week against North Macedonia, and then the Turkish keeper Kakir comes in for the games against Wales and Switzerland, which I think looks quite good, and we're expecting them to be quite tight. And then with Alaba as well, I only want him playing for that first game, and then I bring in Wijndal for the Netherlands, who have then got sort of playing Austria and then North Macedonia, and then Kjaer is playing Belgium. So then I've got Mykolenko who's playing North Macedonia. So I'm kind of trying to target that North Macedonia game, because I really would be surprised if they got more than a couple of goals in this tournament. So that's the kind of thinking with that. And I think I do it with FPL as well. I have a spreadsheet set up and I try and look at who's going to be coming in which week, so that I know kind of how my team's going to look, and I don't want to have to spend any transfers in defence. So I'm hoping this team can get me through. Jake, what do you reckon?
I've got 3 points to make about your defence. The first one is Spinazzola. We talked about him in glowing lights in the first 2 episodes, I think. I showed my team, I had Spinazzola into the Who Scored team, the Stats lads, and they immediately said that he's going to share minutes of Emerson. That just put me off straight away. I think when he's on the pitch, he's going to be a good option, no doubt about it. But anyone who's sharing the minute isn't what I want to do. Certainly not until I know what's going to be sort of the
even
first
if
11.
Even if he starts in the first week, you still think he'll share minutes?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think the 5 subs thing will be key there. There'll be a lot of players that just on a manager's radar, as that's the type of player that I'm going to bring off and keep fresh, and that's a position for Italy. They have 2 strong fullbacks for. What I do like about your defence, actually, the double up on Austria, that's not going to be happening a lot. And if they do keep a clean sheet, that's a very big differential there you've got. I like that. The Austrian manager said that Bachmann will play if he's the first choice, right? That's true?
Yep, he's definitely first choice.
Yeah, okay. So I like that, and I like the idea.
4 million.
4 million. So you're risking nothing really, and you can bring in Kakir later on, fine, because you don't want him to play against Italy anyway, the strong side. Talk to me about Simon Kjaer. Why is he in your side?
Well, I think what Ben was saying, I think Denmark are going a bit under the radar a little bit. They've got really good defensive numbers from qualifying. They've got what looks to me a pretty decent group as well. I think they'll finish second in that group. I fancy them against Finland. I think Finland is one of those first match week targets that we should be looking at. North Macedonia, Finland, Slovakia, Hungary. I think they're the 4 that I want to have at least some players playing in those matches, because I think they're probably the weakest sides in the whole tournament. So he's just there to kind of tap into that, really. There is Mail as well, who is quite popular as well and is the same price. So he's someone who I could swap over to. He's maybe a bit more attacking. But I do think that weaker teams tend to be weaker from set pieces as well. And I do actually fancy players like Kjaer to maybe be on the end of some good deliveries from Eriksson. And imagine getting the double up of an Eriksson assist and a Kjaer goal would be pretty satisfying.
Big bloke, isn't he? He's like 6'20" or something.
Yeah, it'll be very difficult for teams in that group to mark. I think Finland and Russia, I think will struggle particularly. Belgium should be able to handle it, but I think they might struggle. The other 2. So in midfield, I mean, my midfield, I've basically just gone for, like I mentioned, players who are just on everything for their teams. So Insigne, okay, maybe he's not on all the set pieces, but he's widely acknowledged as being kind of the main goal threat. And as we talked about in the other episode, is one of the most shots in Europe. Depay's there just because we talked about him. I think he could be the top scoring player in the whole game. Bale's there, going to be on free kicks, going to be taking shots a lot. Eriksen, good fixtures, and Forsberg as well. So Forsberg is someone who I'm really not seeing in many teams at all. He's only 5.5 on this game, and he's got the complete monopoly for Sweden. He's on everything: free kicks, corners, penalties. Again, he's one of these players who I just think is going to be the chief threat of the team, and someone that I'm looking forward to playing after he's played Spain. So he's going to come in for Slovakia, I think, in match week 2. Thoughts on the midfield, Jake?
Yeah, I like Forsberg, but I think the manager of Sweden actually said he's going to take everything.
How rare is that for a manager to come out and just say that? Yeah.
Which is perfect for fantasy managers to have that sort of information just given to you. Yeah, I like that. To be honest with you, I can't really dig your midfield out too much.
Come on.
Eriksen's not just on everything, but he is the talisman. I don't anticipate him coming off at all in the tournament. And same as Depay, actually. I think Bale might not get as many 90 minutes as you'd like. Even if they're winning the game 1-0 or 2-1, I think Bale could be the one that come off on between 80 and 90, just to shore up defence and to keep him as fresh as possible. And in Insigne, we spoke about him, like 144 shots in Europe's top 5 leagues last season. Only Ronaldo has more. Very shot happy, and this game is kind to players who have a shot. So, actually, one thing I'd say about all your midfield is I think they all like a shot. They all like a dig from 25, even 30 yards. You know, and some of these games are going to be tight, and when they are tight, some of these players just decide to just put one in the top corner from 25 yards, don't they? Because they are the players you have in your team sheet are world class.
Ben, any thoughts?
I mean, we share a couple of players, so it's obviously hard to disagree with those. Gareth Bale is a concern for me. Echo Jake's sentiments about those 90 minutes, and also at the risk of offending maybe one or two Welsh fans, I just don't think Wales are very good, and Bale maybe isn't the player that he once was. He isn't the player that's going to be able to carry that team, to really sort of grab them by the collars and take the game to the opposition, maybe like he once did. They're not at Tottenham domestically, where he's done fairly well in the second half of the season. Maybe his absence from games for Real Madrid may come back to bite him a little bit in this tournament setting. We're talking elite level, the highest level of football you can get. There's no hiding place, and for me, Wales just don't do it, and I'm just not keen on Gareth Bale for that reason. Although at a great price point, and the sort of comments that I make, that really could come back to bite me on the backside, because he is more than capable of turning it on.
Going to take that soundbite and play it to you when Bale gets a hat-trick in the first game. Yeah. I mean, amazingly enough, Bale is actually my enabler in this team. He's the cheapest player I have in my whole front line at just 6 million, which is the main reason he's there. Because I agree, I think it's a tough looking group for Wales. I think Switzerland, Turkey and Italy are all teams that can frustrate them. And when you've got a player like Bale, he's someone who they can obviously put a lot of emphasis on marking and making sure he doesn't do anything. So I do agree. It's just the fact, like Jake mentioned, that I just think he's going to have shots. He's going to get free kicks. He's going to be the man. So if Wales do manage to pick up a win or two, he's going to at least be involved. Okay, so just finally, because I don't spend all night on my team, the three up front, I mean, Lukaku, Kane and Ronaldo, I'm interested to see your teams and whether we've all gone for the same or whether there's some differences here. It's the pretty template front three, I think. I've got teams where I've maybe mixed it around a little bit in some of my other teams, but in my kind of main balanced team, I just think the three of them are so important. Jake, any criticism of that? I mean, you can't really slate those three, can you?
No, and even I've got the same. I'll tell the viewers now. I've got the same front line. I've got the same captain, and it's just because Ronaldo has that hungry game to open with. They're all three of them are on penalties. The only time they're going to come off if the game's won and they've already scored 2, got an assist, really. So you're not really bothered about that 90-minute extra point then, if they've done the business for you. And if the game is tight, they stay on anyway and get you a last-minute winner. So all three of them in a shout getting top goal scorer for the tournament. So good selections.
Ben, I'm not even going to ask you for your opinion on 3 because I'm going to come straight to your team, because your team does not have those 3 strikers. So rather than you telling me what's wrong with mine, I want you to tell me why you've selected 3 that you have. So if you just run through your team quickly for us, and let's start up front.
Lukaku. So yeah, and I've
We're all agreed there.
Yeah, and from the very first podcast, I've championed Belgium and got behind the Red Devils, so hopefully he will deliver. I go Lewandowski first, although there are 1 or 2 question marks, just niggling doubts in my mind. Undoubtedly, probably one of the world's most clinical strikers. Concerns in the Polish camp with a change of manager and a slight change of style, but I just can't ignore that defensive. His domestic form and what he's produced this season, and what he continues to produce season on season. He's a big time player. I think he scored 65 goals in 119 appearances for his country, and so. And at 9 million, I look at some of those other players, the Ronaldos and the Harry Kanes at 13.5. It just frees up budget to spend elsewhere, and I like that. And finally, I think that, again, I'm one for the differential. I like to go anti-template sometimes. I just find it a little bit more exciting.
Differential Dinnery, as many will testify. If I went France, it's Mbappe and Griezmann. But we look at Griezmann's tournament play. I think over the last 2 tournaments, there've been 14 games in tournament play. He's had 14 goals, and he comes in a little bit cheaper than Mbappe, who has had a great season with PSG. I think it's 46 in 47 games, but internationally just 16 and 42. I mean, it's a risk, it's a gamble, because we know Mbappe could pop, but hopefully Griezmann will do the business. So I plumb for him. Like I say, I'm not 100%, but it's that differential element, and that's why I plumb for that 3 there. I think I'd go for Benzema over Griezmann and Mbappe at just 10 million. I know there's some concerns that he might be subbed with Giroud there, or Giroud might start, but I'm actually looking at bringing in Benzema potentially for Ronaldo for the second game when France play Hungary. Jake, what do you think about the front three? Do you think it's too risky to go without Kane and Ronaldo?
Not in this game, no, because we're looking for differentials to win it. And if you want to win it, you need to find those differentials. And Griezmann's a great shout. I think we've not said his name on this podcast throughout. And all of a sudden you look at him and think, he's a good option. He scored 6 goals in the last Euros. He was top goal scorer. He's got the pedigree, knows what the goal is. And like you say, if he's under 5% ownership, and Ben's one of those, and he turns up, then you're laughing. I like the Lewandowski shout. I think Ben, you mentioned about they changed their manager and it's actually unsettled them. But the reason they changed it was to get the team closer to Lewandowski. They were playing a defensive style of football that just isolated Robert Lewandowski at the top. And this new style, and they changed the formation slightly, it just gets the likes of Zielinski closer to Robert Lewandowski. So actually, he's a better option. Yes, they've changed things, but he's a better option now than he would have been under a more settled approach, because it was a more defensive approach. So Lewandowski is going to be a great shout. 41 goals in domestic leagues last season. And Lukaku, captain, very good.
The rubber stamp of approval, that means a lot.
Lewandowski is someone who I'm trying to get into some of my teams, because I think he will fly under the radar because that Lukaku, Kane, Ronaldo template is so strong. But that game against Slovakia does look prime for him. I'm sure he'll get at least a goal in that. Talk us through your midfield then, Ben. There's a familiar name in there that you've been banging on about for every episode so far.
Well, yeah, so I'll have to lead off with Bernardo Silva. I looked at that Portugal team. I really wanted some kind of representation, I'm not keen on Ronaldo for whatever reason. It just doesn't sit very well with us. Maybe it's a little bit too much money in that group, which I think is going to be quite tight. And when I looked at maybe Bruno versus Bernardo, there was no real comparison in terms of goal involvement over the last 14 to 15 competitive games. I think Bernardo is something like 4 goals and 8 assists compared to Bruno, which is just a couple in there. So, you save $1 million. You look at his metrics across Europe's top 5 leagues this season: touches in the opponent's box, progressive passes, expected goals. He's in and around that sort of 95 to 99% percentile. So he's really on top of his game, and I'm expecting something big. And for the price, I thought it'd be rude not to. I've went with Souček, and I stuck him in there. Based on that first fixture, first and foremost. I did have a lot of enthusiasm for it when we started these podcasts, and that enthusiasm is beginning to wane a little bit. So maybe he's on the chopping block after that first game. I don't know. We'll have to see how the Czech Republic perform. I think Scotland will be susceptible to set pieces, and Souček is going to be a big threat. We touched upon Eriksson, who we've got in there as well. Again, I warmed based on Jake's initial comments during those first couple of podcasts, and just that, looking at that Danish side, and they are flying under the radar a little bit. They've had some great results. I think they're looking really solid, and again, he's cheap. He's at a nice price point. And for me, my other starter, which is I'm in a 3-4-3 formation, is Ferran Torres. It's a little bit of a gamble, this one, for me. We've seen, his quality up close and personal on Tyneside. Got a hat-trick against Newcastle and was absolutely superb. A little bit unfortunate that he wasn't really able to follow that up in the City team, which I think would have led him well into the tournament. I think he was substituted when Cancelo was sent off, and then he was on the bench the following game after that. And then we've seen the return of Aguero, and the rest is history, as it was. But undoubtedly, he's an exceptional talent. Again, in terms of his attacking outputs and his XG, he's up there with some of the best players there in Europe, top sort of 7-8%. And I think he could be the focal point of that Spanish team. I don't think the Spanish side are as good as they have been in recent years, but with the likes of Thiago in behind, supplying those bullets, Torres could be the main man. And for a young guy, he could lap that up and really flourish and set down a marker in this tournament, or that's what I'm hoping for. So that's me for midfield. And I've picked that midfield based on fixtures, and I've went with Insigne on the bench. Italians opening up against Turkey. I expect those two teams to finish 1 and 2 in the group. I think it could be a really tight one, so I'm happy to maybe risk leaving Insigne on the bench for that opening fixture, with maybe a switch with Souček possibly for the next game.
Jake, what are your thoughts? Ferran Torres, what do you reckon about him?
Yeah, Torres, didn't expect to see that. I got a sneaky feeling that Spain will do well, actually, but I don't want to put them in because of the troubled sort of lead up to the tournament. COVID sort of ripping through their squad right now. And the other thing as well is that they haven't got Sergio Ramos, and I just think that they've only called up 24 players. You're allowed 26. I don't know. It might be something a little bit off in the camp. However, I've got a sneaky feeling they might do all right. And Ferran Torres is the one. You could say he's out of position here in this game too, because he'll play one of the front three for Spain.
A lot of money though, 9 million.
It is a lot of money. But Spain will see a lot of the ball, and he might get a lot of chances.
Yeah, I like him. He's someone I consider. It's just the price that's been putting me off a little bit. Just because he's entering into that kind of premium mark, and he hasn't got the set pieces and things. But I do agree with you, Ben. I think he will be Spain's main goal threat in this tournament, and he plays really well for Spain. Kind of shows a little bit how far Spain have fallen when their main sort of their talisman player is a kind of rotation option at Manchester City. But I do rate him. I think he's a good player, and I think it's funny. I think if that red card hadn't happened and he had kicked on against Brighton in that match, I think he could have ended up starting the Champions League final, and it might have been a different outcome. So I do feel for him because he was playing really well up until that point. So yeah, no, I like it. Let's talk about your defence then. Finally, so you've got a Danish defender in there as well. You've got Rodriguez, who's on penalties for Switzerland, and you've got John Stones. National pride, Ben. I love it.
Absolutely not. I'll start with Rodriguez, and he was probably one of the first players that I spoke about way back in that first podcast. Defender on penalties. We talked about the scoring matrix on FanTeam and players being awarded for shots on target. We're talking about 2.79 shots on target per 90 for Rodriguez. And I see this again as a tight group, and particularly maybe that opening fixture against Wales. I think the Swiss will have got a really good chance of keeping a clean sheet. And we will see beyond that first game what happens. I've got a little bit of depth on the bench there, so he can easily come out for Meunier. And Meunier was my Belgian pick because, again, I can see them progressing through that group stage with 3 clean sheets. And I looked at. I know I've got Meunier on the bench at the minute. He could come in for Melee. I think all defenders there, I expect all of them to get clean sheets. I really do. And the reason I went for Melee over Meunier is he hasn't had many starts since moving up into the senior side, but in the 6, he's scored twice. He's got a couple of goals there. I know he's not guaranteed a start, so that's my only question mark. And I could just, like I say, I could maybe rotate him with Meunier as well. But, we've talked about Denmark, so I like that. And I know you talked about the price of Ferran Torres, but the way I've set up my team, I actually did have a boatload of cash left in the bank. And that come into play by the selection of John Stones. I was heeding some of Josh's advice and how FanTeam like to weight those attacking players, those players further up the pitch. So didn't want to spend a lot on that back line. But when I had a look at what I had left in the bank, I think maybe target an England defender because there's a possibility there of, again, I see maybe 3 clean sheets. John Stones was the cheapest of what I would say is a guaranteed starter at 6 million. He got 4 goals this season, so he's really played himself into that squad. I think he's played the most minutes for City since the first time, since his first season at the club, so just under 2,000 Premier League minutes. He's got some crucial goals, and he, in the last tournament in Russia, he got himself on the score sheet twice against Panama. So maybe he's just a guy for, maybe he's just a big time player and he likes scoring at these tournaments. So that's what I'm hoping for in that regard. And on the bench, I mentioned Meunier. The other one is Selik, the Turkish defender. I just think the whole Turkish squad generally across the board has been massively underpriced by FanTeam. I think there's some real bargains in there, and I expect Turkey to do well in their group. So at that price point, he can play, but if he doesn't, we stick him on the bench, and it's no great shakes. I'm happy to do so. Yeah,
all sounds good to me. I think England's group it looks, I keep saying it, and I know it's not just because it's England, but we should win that group comfortably. And I can imagine we will get some clean sheets in it. The difficulty is predicting who's exactly going to start. And that's why if I was going to pick a defender, I would go for John Stones as well. Thoughts on Ben's back line, Jake?
I like Ben's shout of John Stones. There are some players who just feel like they like an important goal. They've got a knack for important goals. I also like John Stones. I don't know if you remember in the World Cup when we beat Colombia on penalties and he turned around to the Colombians and giving it large. And when we'd won, got a bit of a soft spot for him for that. Although that's no reason to put someone in your fantasy team. I've got Rodriguez myself, so I agree with all the reasons. I mean, the words penalty and defender in fantasy football usually equals you coming into my team. Although I haven't done that with Egan Alioski, the Leeds player for North Macedonia, because he's North Macedonian, of course. And then Donnarumma and goal, I'm the same. So I can actually see Italy getting 3 clean sheets, to be honest with you. I think Italy will be brilliant, especially in the early stages of competition.
There you go, Ben. You made it through relatively unscathed.
Yeah, very, very, very pleased with that, considering, there's a few differentials in there.
I'm not sure about Griezmann or Souček or Bernardo Silva or Ferran Torres, if I'm being completely honest, but you do make a good case.
If Ferran Torres was Ferran Torres on penalties and free kicks, Ferran Torres is a good option, but Ferran Torres is not on those things, so therefore he's probably overpriced. But again, he's definitely a differential.
Differential Dinnery strikes again. We'll see if it pays off. So let's come over to Mr. Who Scored next with his team. Come on, Jake, this better be good. You're the kind of, the poster child for this podcast. So come on, wow us with your team.
You'll see that this team now is hopefully on screen in front of you. It's very safe. I'm happy to be safe for this. I'm not. There's a couple of picks in there. I'm not too sure. Oh, good. I'm glad you think so. I'll run for it for the viewers. So we've got Donnarumma in goal. At the back, Bonucci to double up on the Italy defence. I've got Gosens and Rodriguez in defence too. And then in midfield, Depay, Gnabry, Souček and Eriksen. And up front, probably the template front three, Lukaku, Kane and Ronaldo. And then on the bench, we've got Dubravka, Malinowski, Zabani, Malinowski, and Barisic, the Croatian. Where would you like me to start?
I tell you where I'd like you to start. You've obviously from day one, you've championed England. We talked about highest point scorer, golden ball, and then you talked about potentially the biggest flop. And you went England all the way across the board, and one of your biggest flops was Germany, and the possibility of Joachim Low. Maybe it's his swan song. Would the players really be invested in it, or is he really that bothered? And just to see maybe one England player in that side and two Germans, that's a little bit of a surprise. That's a bit of a curveball for me, Jake.
You'll see that I'm actually wearing a German top tonight, as a nod to the fact that I'm bringing these guys in. And when I've
how much are they paying you, Jake?
Well, I wish. So on Germany, I've read all the supplements. The Guardian did Who Scored did one, and actually, I think that Germany might not be as written off as we should have, as we all did at the start of this podcast. Germany are actually one of three teams who play all three of their group games at home, which I didn't give much of a nod to, but I do think that could be something to look at. Also, Germany spanked Latvia for 7 the other day, which Latvia are ranked 138th or whatever they are, and that's fine. Latvia aren't going to beat anybody, but they did score 7 goals, and scoring goals breeds confidence in squads. I mean, England played 2 friendlies and only won 1-0. We'd all feel better about it right now if they were both 4-0 victories. On Gosens, he played on the left of a 3-4-3. He scored their opener. Yeah. He found himself drifting to the box on loads of occasions. I noticed, and
he's a great pick.
I think quite quietly, I think he could be a good pick. And against Hungary, especially, if they get a clean sheet, he could score big there and a goal and assist. So I like him. Elsewhere in my defence, I think Bonucci is probably the most nailed on of all the Italians. That's why he's in there. Although we will see the Italian lineup before we have to submit our final fan team squads, which is nice. So Spinazzola might come in, but I think actually Bonucci is going to be the one for me. And then, as I mentioned, Rodriguez on penalties. So
one glaring omission as well for me, Jake. I mean, I don't know what you're trying to do here, but you've championed as well Zielinski from Poland. You've even mentioned him obviously as a potential supply line to Lewandowski, and I did expect him, I must admit, to be in your squad as well. Yeah, so I did mention yesterday I've got 2 teams. Zielinski's in my other team. The other team I'm happy to be a bit more maverick with, if you like. There's definitely 2 styles I'm going for. So Zielinski's in that one. He's only 5 million, Zielinski. He could have found himself in this team instead of Souček, but I couldn't do that to old Tommy. But then elsewhere, Depay, we've all said enough about him, handing out the oranges at half time and everything. Gnabry's in there actually probably because Josh turned me on to him on the last episode, said that Gnabry's his boy, and if anyone's Josh's boy, then he can be my boy too. I think
with Gnabry, he is a really nice player to watch. He's really exciting. We've seen him play in the Champions League against a lot of English teams. He just scores buckets of goals for fun. If you can recreate any of that form, then I'll be happy to take those points. And then Eriksen in the midfield, he's on everything too. Free kicks, corners, throw-ins. So I'm pretty pleased with that midfield, to be honest with you. One thing I would say about my final slot midfield, Malinowski, we've been talking about him a lot and saying what a good option he is. We might have got the wrong Ukrainian midfielder on closer reflection. So there's a guy called Marlos. So all the season stats point to Malinowski, but my hunch now says that Marlos might come into this team. I think he might be Ukrainian's most important player. He came on at half-time in a friendly the other day. He made 2 assists straight away. He's such a silky player. He's quite short, got a low centre of gravity, left-footed. I've seen his left foot in a lot of the supplements I've been reading. His left foot's described as either a wand or a hammer. And somewhere between that it sounds like a good player to me. So I think Marlos might come into my team instead of Malinowski. They're the same price. And I think he might have more of an eye for a goal rather than Malinowski. I think he might have more of an eye for an assist. So that's the only change I might make here from now until the deadline.
I also quite like Sigankov. He plays on the wing as well. He's been... Ukraine have been really poor in after qualifying, but Sigankov has actually been playing really well for the Ukraine as well. So he could also be a factor. They have actually got some really good attacking options. It's one of the reasons why I've ended up going for Forsberg, who's the same price. And, obviously I really like Malinowski, but Forsberg at the same price with all the set pieces. I don't think Malinowski's on penalties either, which was something that put me off him a little bit as well.
There was 2 players on my draft. I thought you were going to say Zinchenko. I do like him. I like his heat map. He plays in a slightly advanced role as well. So, and still cheap as chips. And also Diogo Jota was another one that was very close to getting in my team, which we haven't mentioned. If he can replicate anything like the form that he's shown at Liverpool this season when fit, then he could be huge. I think he could be another player that flies under the radar. A great differential.
You mentioned Zinchenko there. He actually took Ukraine's first penalty the other night, which could be a good option.
Yeah,
I think we've mentioned that Ukraine might not be the darkest horses, but they've got a good side, and like I say, good qualifying record. They could actually win that group. I think the Netherlands might stumble, especially in that first game. I think they might struggle against Ukraine. I
think if the Ukraine can get a win against Netherlands, then they will go on and win that group. That first game is massive for who finishes first. No, really interesting. I mean, the one player that I will mention as well. I mean, I can't believe that you have a Croatian defender. Croatia are pretty bad, defensively. What's your thinking there?
I just really like Barisic. I really like attacking fullbacks. I don't anticipate I use him too much. Looking at my team, there's this safe side I've got. I don't anticipate making too many changes from subs. Maybe Malinowski might come in or Marlos as it might be, but really I'm looking at those guys who are going to be starting every game and going to stick with them. Roll my transfer, like I said in that second game week, and go from there.
So I'm backing Austria. Ben's backing Turkey, and you're backing Germany. That's kind of where we see ourselves. I mean, we've only got 2 players the same across all 3 teams, and that's Christian Eriksen and Romelu Lukaku. So it's interesting that we've got so much sort of diversity between our picks. I thought we'd have at least a couple. I thought Depay, for example, would be in all of our teams, and Ben hasn't got him.
It just shows, I think, that there are so many options in this game. It's not like the Premier League where there are fewer better teams. There are a lot of good teams in this, and there are world-class players everywhere. There's players that I've considered, like Cancelo or Alderweireld, or there's so many that I just think, they could be a great option here, and they haven't made either of my teams. And that's what's probably going to make this a really, really fun tournament to play this game.
Well, thanks, guys. We've all shared our teams. We've all come out the other side. I think they're good teams, to be fair. So hopefully we'll do well, and I'll do a bit better.
If one of us wins it, we're sharing the winnings, yeah?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Unless one of you 2 win, and then I'll
take you out for a pint, lads.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Virtual.
So with that done, we can come on to the competition. Jake mentioned earlier we're giving away free entries to the game. and we've been running a competition every show. All you've got to do is get Jake's trivia question correct right in the comment section below, and we will select one of the right answers at random and give you a free entry into the FanTeam game. So Jake, what trivia question have you got for us on our final episode?
So the last one is, of the 600 plus players that will feature at this tournament, which player has the most international caps to his name? And as just mentioned, we'll select one right answer at random, and all winners will be contacted on YouTube by midday on Friday 11th of June. So keep your eyes peeled for that, and we'll get your accounts topped up with a free entry as soon as possible, so you can copy my team.
Yeah, or mine. Oh, no, don't copy my team. Yeah, copy Jake's. Reduce his prize money if he wins. So thanks everyone for listening to FanTeam Daily by Who Scored. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And as Jake mentioned earlier, if you haven't listened to the other episodes, go back and make sure you check those out. There should be some good advice in there, particularly from Jake and Ben, less so from myself, but maybe a few nuggets. So that was our final show. So Ben, Jake, it's been great doing these with you over the last week. Good luck with your teams. Let's hope one of us at least can win some money on FanTeam. But yeah, thank you for joining me for this.
Cheers, guys.
It's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Until the next time.